Hi class, Tanya Hertz here. We are going to talk a little bit tonight about legal forms of business ownership. And I'm going to pull up some slides to share with you. And if you can, hopefully you can see this here, we have four major or primary types of legal ownership. And those are sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, and LLC. Now, an LLC is not a corporation. It just acts like a corporation. And so oftentimes, like if you see in the screen, it looks like it's a corporation, but it's not. It's not. It's its own business type. So these are the four types. The first two, sole proprietorship and partnership, are intrinsically linked to the owner of the business. That means we can't separate them from the business. The owner and the business are the same. So that means all the profits that go to the business go to the owner. All the liabilities and risks that go to the business go to the owner. So that can be good, that can be bad. And the two other separate legal structures, corporation and LLC, are separate from the owner. So they have their own identification number. We don't call it a social security number, but it's very like a social security number. It's an employment identification number, an EIN. So they do a lot of things that a person can do. They're separate legal entities, and the good thing about that is that there is not as much risk for the owner of the business. All right, moving on. So there are a lot of considerations to make when you are thinking about choosing which structure is right for you. Now remember, you're not stuck with any given organizational form when you're choosing, but it is expensive to change, and there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of things involved with changing forms of ownership. So you really do want to do the research first and consider factors such as the costs, the continuity of the business, meaning that if something were to happen to you, what happens to the business? With the first two forms of ownership, partnership and sole proprietorship, if you were to die, there are the business doesn't automatically go on without you. You also have to think about transferring ownership, selling the business. It's more difficult to sell a sole proprietorship or a partnership than it is a corporation or an LLC. You have to think about things like management control. Could you lose your control in the business if you don't have 100 or more than 50% share or controlling interest? This could happen very often, and I've seen it happen very often with structures like corporations, where the founder, after they started the business, they put their heart and soul into the business, and they lose controlling interest by bringing in investors or other reasons, and then they can actually lose their position in the business and actually no longer even be employed by the business. We saw a similar thing happen to Steve Jobs back in the day. Also, we have to think about whether or not we're going to be trying to seek outside funds and what kind of funds we're looking at. Are we thinking about bringing in investors or taking out bank loans? We don't want to choose a sole proprietorship, obviously, if we're thinking about doing something like that, because it's difficult to raise funds that way. Also, there's some important income tax considerations, including whether or not you're taxed only once or twice. Certain forms of ownership, there's double taxation issues. And then liability is probably the number one consideration that people make. If you are a sole proprietor or a partner, you can or you will be held liable for the debts and the liabilities, other liabilities of the business. So that could be troubling. That could be very troubling, especially if the business is sued or something like this. Okay, so sole proprietorships are just for one person, separate entity, a separate person by themselves, and they become part of the business. The business becomes part of them. There's unlimited liability. That means even if we have a separate business banking account and we try to keep things separate, as a sole proprietor, there's always the potential that we could that we could be sued, or the business could be sued and then be held personally liable for it. Now we're taxed at the we're taxed once, but it's as an individual. So any money that we make as a business, it actually goes towards our overall family income at the end of the year when we're paying our income taxes. So there's advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons to every form of ownership. These are easy. There's not a lot of paperwork. There's not a lot of regulations. You can do what you want in a sole proprietorship, but again, you can't raise money from most outside sources. You're not going to be able to necessarily sell the business very easily. It can be problematic. And when you are paying taxes at the personal level, that could, there could be some serious implications with that. So there might be better forms for you to choose. So partnerships are like sole proprietorships, but worse. I shouldn't say that. They're different. They're riskier, because not only do you have all of those same drawbacks of a sole proprietorship, but now you have other people involved, which can be problematic. But they also bring their own individual strengths and their own skills. And anytime you're starting a business in a team, it's better than starting as an individual. More knowledge, skills, experience, connections, et cetera, et cetera. So the partnership is like a sole proprietorship in that the business doesn't pay taxes, the individuals do. But the way that you're taxed in a partnership is that each individual owner in the partnership pays taxes as a percentage of the overall income of the business. So there is some limitations to liability in partnerships if we set it up as a limited partnership. So I was talking about a general partnership. A general partnership means there's only general partners in the business, and general partners are active in the business. They are doing things in the business is what I mean. They're active in managing the business and operating the business. They have daily operations in the organization. And because of that, they have also personal liability in the business. Limited partnerships are when there are both general partners and at least one limited partner in the business. And a limited partner is also known as a silent partner. And this is somebody who does not have an active role in the business. They're just there to invest in it. They're the money people, right? The silent partners are the money people. They're just investing in the business, and they don't have any liability because of it. And so they're not held personally liable. Now, there are other ways to protect ourselves from liability other than just business structures, such as insurance and other things. But some of the structures, the corporate structure or the legal structures are better at protecting the owners from liability. Now, that said, there is no single form of ownership where you have no personal responsibility. There's always the possibility that you could lose that protection, especially if you're found guilty of doing something illegal and unethical. I was telling those of you who are in the class, we see judges very often remove those protections of corporations and other and LLCs, and they pierce the corporate veil and actually require that the owners pay or held personally responsible for some of the debts. All right. So corporations, though, in general, don't have that personal responsibility or liability of the owners. Corporations are totally separate from the owners. They're a separate legal entity. They have their own rights. They have their own responsibilities under the law. They are very similar to a human person. They can buy property. They can sign contracts. They can be prosecuted under the law. The way you own a corporation is that stocks are issued, and the stocks are issued in proportion to your ownership. We call the founders or owners of the company, rather, shareholders. And there are several different types of corporations. We're just going to look at a few of the types of corporations. We can go way down a rabbit hole in this, but the basic form of corporation is a C corporation. It's the most common type of corporation. All of the publicly traded companies that you can think of, Google or Amazon, whatever you can think of publicly traded, is a C corp. And that's because a C corp has no limit to the size of owners. The owners can be anyone. They can be people, they can be US citizens, they can be foreign citizens, they can be other corporations, trusts, any estates, anything that you can think of pretty much can be an owner. And the way that the decisions are made is owners get to vote on what happens in a corporation. And then the board of directors will set strategies and implement rules. So, problem with a C corporation, it is the biggest and oldest form of corporation, but it is also problematic because you get taxed twice. You get taxed first as, well, the business gets taxed first. So any profit that the business makes, they pay taxes on that. Then when you take any of that money out yourself as an owner or dividend, as an owner through a dividend, you pay tax again. So you're taxed at the corporate level, you're taxed at the personal level. Let me explain that a little better. The way you take money out as an owner is you pay dividends. The corporation pays dividends. Those dividends are your share of the profit, and you pay tax on that. So in order to get rid of that double taxation, an S corporation was developed. So an S corporation is a pass-through corporation in that the profits don't get paid up at the top corporate level, but they pass through that corporate level, and then the owner pays them when they take out dividends. The problem is, you would think if you hear this, you're thinking, well, then why isn't everybody a Subchapter S corporation? It's better, right? You're only paying taxes once. Well, there's requirements. Only certain people can be a Subchapter S, no more than 100 stockholders or shareholders. Every shareholder has to be a human person or an estate or a trust, but not a corporation and or other business entity. There's only one class of stock that we can issue. And I should have said this about a C Corp. In a C Corp, you can issue different kinds of stock. There's what's known as preferred stock and common stock. And that just tells us when people get paid and how they get paid. And so if you have that, you can decide how people get paid differently, but not with an S Corp. It's just common stock in an S Corp. And this is the big one. If you want to start an S Corp or you want to own an S Corp, you must be a US citizen. There's no non-resident alien stockholders, is the way they put it. So benefits and drawbacks of corporate structures. The big benefit is that limited personal liability. The business has the liability for the debts and not us as owners. We're only liable for the money that we've invested into that corporation. It's easy to transfer ownership. It's easy to raise money. It's if I were to die today, my corporation lives on, right? That's nice about it. But again, drawbacks are the double taxation. We can lose controlling interest in the organization if, well, we'll lose control if we no longer have controlling interest, and that happens when we continue to split our shares or our stocks in order to raise more money. They're expensive, they're complicated, there's a lot of restrictions, and they're required by law to have a legal board of directors that governs them, and they typically are insiders, people working for the organization, but there can be some outsiders in there as well. And this is different than a board of advisors. So a board of directors is required by law with every corporation. A board of advisors is recommended for every type of business structure, regardless of whether you are part of the business or not, whether it's a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporate structure, S Corp, LLC, does not matter. Board of advisors is a good idea. And they're better at getting things done because they can be less threatening. They can be more collaborative. They can't tell you what to do. They can just make recommendations. Board of directors bring a lot to the table. They're the governing body of the organizations. They're the ones that choose who is in which position in the organization, the executives, how much they get paid. They approve all the strategic plans. They're the ones who really control the company, right? And they bring in experience and direction, and they can help mediate and solve disputes as well. So there's a couple other kinds of ownership we're going to talk about. Like I said, LLCs, the newest and the most fun. It's probably the best type of ownership right now for in entrepreneurship for small businesses, because we have that limited liability, but we don't have so many restrictions like an S corporation. You can have more than 100 shareholders, and it's a lot easier to set up. There's tax benefits. It's a great structure. It's a great structure. It's still more expensive than a sole proprietorship to set up, but it's a lot less expensive and less complicated than a corporation. Just wanted to quickly tell you about PC, professional corporation. This is just used by professionals in different fields. Usually there's licensing requirements that go along with them. Attorneys, you see, have these. Doctors. I think my dentist is a PC. So LLCs. A lot of you will undoubtedly choose this as your business structure. It's only, it's very similar to an S Corp. It's kind of an S Corp combined with a partnership. So the money passes through. You don't pay it at the corporate level. Or it's not a corporation, the company level. You don't pay it at first at the business level. It just passes through, and you pay it as personal income of the owners. And that's how you pay yourself in an LLC. You pay yourself as income. Yeah. And another reason why so many people choose this structure is because the owners can be anyone. They can be foreign corporations. They can be other corporations. So that's nice, right? And there's no restriction on the number of members, like an S Corp. A couple last things. An NPO is a nonprofit organization. It is not the same as a traditional for-profit business in that you don't own them. They don't call you an owner. They call you a founder. You're paid through an NPO by your the wages or the salary that's paid to you as employment, but you don't get dividends. You don't, because there's no ownership, right? There's no stock. Most of these are granted tax exempt status. We call this 501c3 status. That's the IRS designation, but not all of them are, but the majority. So when I say they don't pay taxes, that means they don't pay almost most forms of taxes. They don't pay sales tax. They don't pay property tax. They don't pay business income tax, right? And because the reason they don't pay taxes is because their mission is not to make money, right? Yes, they can make money, and they in fact should make enough money in order to sustain operations. They must be able to support themselves. That name nonprofit is often very confusing to people, because then they think, oh, well, then the business doesn't have to worry about money. It's just the money comes for free. Somebody said to me the other day, well, don't they just get all their money from the government? Isn't it just, the government pays for all this? No, that's not the way it works. You still have to maintain operations. You still have to run the business like a business. You just have something else that you do with the profit. And that something else is you should be helping society in some way. They should have an underlying, or in order to be a nonprofit, you must have an underlying mission to help society. Could be religious, could be charitable, educational, whatever it is, it needs to be something that is outside of the scope of just making money for the shareholders. And I should say that when you're in a corporation, the primary goal of a corporation or a traditional for-profit business is maximize shareholder value. Maximize shareholder value. Make as much money as possible for the owners of the company. Now, that doesn't have to be the only goal, and it shouldn't be the only goal, but it is the primary. With an NPO, it's not the primary. So here's a comparison of the legal structures. I welcome you to look over this on your own, and the considerations of taxes and how you get your money out of the corporation, how you vote, how you what happens to the corporation when you die, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll let you look at this. I'm going to stop this here. This is a long enough video. That was our video on legal forms of business ownership. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in class.